Hi, everyone. Hi. So, Nayan said we're going to talk about some numbers. People say, why are we wasting our time talking about numbers? So something that we all need to understand, there's a lot of hype around e-commerce. And Nayan mentioned himself, Flipkart is the poster boy. But we also heard that Flipkart got its value halved, right? We just heard Zomato, which was a billion-dollar company, is now suddenly valued at $500 million. So we kind of need to understand what the market realistically looks like, okay? And what we'll do over the next few, a little bit of time, is to go through different numbers in India, globally, just for you to understand. So let's start off by looking at global numbers. Approximately, across the world, US leads in e-commerce, right? But what you'll see in the chart is China is kind of taking them over. US, which is going to be approximately $279 billion in e-commerce, China is predicted to be at $330 billion, okay? Something that is very unique because e-commerce was invented in the US. Like Nayan mentioned, Amazon, eBay, everything was born in the US. But now suddenly, China is going to take over, okay? If you look at the chart, India stands this year at approximately $20 billion, okay? Again, if you compare it to the other markets, it's a very small amount, even though there's so much hype, right? We're only at $20 billion. You look at UK, $175 billion. And you know what? Something that's very close to us, Latin America, which the economies are very similar to ours, they still stand at almost double the number, at $40 billion. So we have a long way to go, right? Even though the hype is there, we're still not there. Again, something that we all need to notice, why is China stepping ahead of India? One of the major reasons is their population. Something that people believe that China is going to be China's liability is now going to end up being their asset, okay? Something that we also need to look at as a country, because that's a liability that we also have, right? We have the second largest population. But can we make it into an asset like China did? Now, in 2007, when realistically the industry was taking off, it was about $2 billion. In 2014, we kind of ended the year at about $13.5 billion, right? Nice growth over 7 years. And then in 2016, which is this year, we're kind of predicted to be $35 billion. And last year, for the ones that are wondering, we ended at somewhere close to about 20-somewhat billion. Now, other thing you need to notice is that by 2020, okay, we're predicted to be 120 billion. So if you look at today, let's say this year we end at 35 billion, and going to 120 billion, it's a huge opportunity, right? People talk about that the valuations are decreasing, et cetera. But if you look at the market has huge potential. One other fact that I wanted to share with everybody. All of you heard of Singles Day in China? Yeah? Do you know what the sales were on Singles Day in China?
70 billion.
No. It's a single day, and they had 14.3 billion in sales in one day. Okay? One day. That's almost all of our 2014 number. Right? So they are able to create this kind of sales, right? So something we need to understand, because we're talking so much about e-commerce, but we're forgetting that we're still nascent. We're still just beginning. When I started my journey, US was just at about the same level, okay? We were just beginning, okay? 95 or so, e-commerce was just getting about. All of these guys were starting off. Amazon, I still remember somebody asked the question, how did they find that bookstore? And I remember because we also bought that book on Amazon. It was very simple, actually. There was something called affiliate marketing. You actually saw their link on some other site. It was not that we went on a search engine. I was going on another site, educational site, and saw Amazon's link there. So again, India is somewhere there, right? We're about 10, 11 years behind the US as far as the numbers are concerned. But anyway, that's a good opportunity for us. So why do we think India is actually going to grow? Okay? These are some numbers as far as internet users across the world. Now, if you look at it, India has approximately 462 million internet users. Okay? That's almost half our population, by the way. Almost. Now, only second to China, which stands at 721 million. US and all are 286. So even though they're driving $279 billion worth of sales, they only have 286 million internet users. Versus India, which almost has double of that, and we only drive 35 billion. So this is some potential that we have. But a lot more people in India will have to buy online for the numbers to hit. Now, there are some challenges we have. If you look at it, I kind of tracked 10 countries and said, where does India stand when it comes to penetration? India is at 28% penetration for internet compared to other countries. You compare Western countries, which stand at 80+%. Or you compare China, which stands at 49%. That's a challenge we need to overcome for the industry to keep on growing. Now, what do the online buyers in India look like? How many of them are there? Obviously, we see, like I said, news every day. But how many buyers are actually online? So in 2014, it was estimated there were about 25 million online buyers. Okay? Now, what it said is last year, that number went up to almost 50 million. In a year, it doubled. And by 2017, we're saying it's going to double again. It's going to go to 100 million. These numbers include travel, services, all of the activities that happen online. Now, there was a survey done recently. And the reason I put this out there, because I think it's important to know what people think and people say, right? They say that 23% of people that went through the survey claim that they have purchased something online. I think that's a decent number, given that internet penetration is only at 28%, and out of the survey, 23% say they've purchased online. Now, obviously, the survey is a little bit skewed, right? It's being taken in larger cities, okay? Probably people are more apt to have bought online. But I think it's good because we can also see how other countries are performing, right? UK, China, US, US 66% of people said they purchased something online. Just something to keep in mind. If you ask me what the absolute number is in India, it's more closer to 2.5%. It's not 23%. 23% it's skewed because who they did the survey from. But the real numbers more look like 2.5% of the population. Okay? These are closer to who come online and buy.
Yeah. Just one small clarification on the numbers. When you say 2.5% people have actually bought, are they from the entire Indian population or only the internet users population?
No, 2.5% is entire India.
Entire India. So if it's 130 crores, then that's 2.5% of 130 crore Indians have bought from. Something and not just the 28%, 2.5%. Right? That's what. Okay.
I think the numbers that we estimated is all based on this growth. Today, the potential hasn't been dealt with. In India, organized retail is what? 10, 11, 12% of total retail. Still, we got the rest of it in what? Unorganized, right? So how is that going to expand? We can't leave the country at unorganized retail, correct? It can be operated from the small shops. If they have the aspiration, and I think later on we're going to cover why e-commerce is growing. And we're going to talk about all these things, right? If they want to buy something, where are they going to go? Right? They have to come online because there's no other option. You're also forgetting that most of e-commerce was driven from travel, right? IRCTC, etc. So today, the only way to book these tickets are through these terminals that people have, or you go online or through your mobile, etc. Right? That's what's going to keep on driving e-commerce in India. It's a big, big opportunity because even tier 2, 3, and we're going to talk about it later, they're driving e-commerce in India.
What is the role of mobile devices in helping e-com?
Great segue into my next slides, okay? So let's turn our attention towards mobile. 52% of Indians own mobiles according to a research that was recently published. Whereas, though, be cautious, 81% in the US own a mobile. Okay? So we're still at 50-something percent, 52%, but US, you have more than 81% that own the mobile. Just keep that in mind. When we move to the next slide, I'll tell you why I'm talking about it.
So that means if you say 52% of the people are having mobiles, so the best business would be to sell mobiles.
Absolutely.
Because then you can reach 50% of rest of the population. That will be the best business for next 5 years.
So I think perfect. If you look at the top selling categories online, mobile is it. Right? It is a huge scope. Online mobiles do sell the most. So there is huge scope. But now, why am I talking about this? Why did I say 52% of Indians own a mobile and 81% own a mobile in the US? Now, if you look at the next slide, which is a very unique slide, 65% of India's internet traffic comes through a mobile, okay? Versus 30% in China and 22% in the US, right? Can you imagine? We own less mobiles, but most of our traffic comes through a mobile. Okay, 65% of internet traffic, and this is data from TRI. They're saying that's how much traffic comes through a mobile in India. Now, another stat. In India, 66% of page views have been gotten through mobiles. So if you understand the web, right, when you open a website, it's called a page view. 66% have come through mobiles in India. Okay, you can see other stats, right? 33% from a desktop, 1% from your tablet, and almost nothing from other devices like your gaming devices, etc. But imagine 66%. Now, another couple of stats, because I'm trying to make a point here, and I'll make the point at the end of this. 84% of adult population in India owns a mobile. So even though 52% is total, if you look at only the adult population, it's actually 84%. Nobody made that note before when I said 52%. Right? You forgot the kids. Now, out of that total number, 33% have a smartphone. So out of 84, 33% have smartphones today. I think we don't all realize that. Because smartphones are getting so cheap, more and more people are going out and purchasing smartphones. Now, a point that I was trying to make. Do you realize that the first computer screen that most people in India will see is a mobile? It's not going to be a desktop, it's not going to be a laptop, it is not going to be a tablet. So when you're devising your ventures, you're talking about marketing, you're talking about selling something, this is something to keep in mind, that most people, the first devices they will see in India is a mobile. Okay? They're probably more apt to use a mobile anyway because they're used to using WhatsApp, Facebook, and whatever else. Now, some numbers from our famous e-commerce players. Okay? 70% of traffic on Flipkart is through a mobile. 70%. And these are published numbers, by the way. So these numbers we didn't take from public domain. These were numbers that these companies have published. That 70% of their traffic comes through mobiles. Snapdeal says 65% comes through a mobile, and 40% for shop clues. Now, eBay and Amazon, being US-based companies, they don't like to reveal their numbers. But I'm sure if you looked at eBay's numbers and Amazon's numbers, they would probably be driving above 50% through mobiles. Okay? Again, point that I was trying to make. Mobiles is the future. Yes. Now, we're going to cover more trends later, but there's one other trend that I wanted to cover. Something called social commerce. Okay? Do you know that 90% of all sales across the world in retail, e-com, etc., is socially influenced? Right? Your friends, your family, somebody you saw, right? That's how you purchase. Okay? So, Facebook is actually leading the way online for social commerce. Because online it's going to be the same thing. Okay? Purchases are going to be socially influenced. Okay? There are sites that currently only sell with a social commerce, right? They show you what other people have bought, okay? What your friends have bought, what your friends are seeing, and based on that they're selling. This is going to be a huge trend in India also. Here, more than probably any other country, we like to ask. We like to compare, right? So Facebook is kind of leading the way with Twitter, following Pinterest, and others. Okay? What we need to talk about, what does our target market look like? Who are the people we're trying to sell to, right? What are the demographics? Where are they located, etc. So this kind of shows us that 80 to 90% of online sales are by millennials and Gen X. Okay? These are guys between 25 and 44. Okay? I know the chart says 49, but it's actually 25 to 44 drive 80 to 90% of sales online. Not only they drive sales, they're the guys who browse the most as well. So in India, do you know that 90% of the population is between 25 and 44? I'm talking about the online population. This again drives potentially even more, okay? Because we have the perfect set of people that will come online and buy from us. So if we look at Indian e-commerce, back in 2014, 29%, a little over 29%, was driven by e-tailing. Okay? E-tailing is selling products and services online. Rest of it was driven either by travel, 60-something%, and the other by C2C players such as OLX, Quicker, etc. Right? If you look at 2016, that number is going more towards e-tailing. Almost 33% will be e-tailing, 55% in travel, and rest of it in other C2C services and etc. Right? Now back in 2010 or so, almost 80 to 90% of the market was driven by travel. Now travel is slowly shrinking in size, right, of the market, but reality is in absolute numbers still increasing, but as far as the share, it's actually decreasing. Now, the other part of this, something that I think is very interesting, I think most people believe e-commerce is a big city phenomenon, right? That most people in big towns buy from e-commerce, in metro cities buy from e-commerce, but it's actually not true. If you look at 2014, 60% of online sales came through tier 2 and 3 and below. Only 40% came from tier 1 and metros. Now, that's even going to change even further. It's not going to become even more metro. It's going to be that it's going to become that 65% of sales by 2017 will come from smaller towns, tier 2, 3, 4 down. And again, we're going to talk later about why that's happening. Now, these are some of the top selling categories online. Almost a good bit of the market, more than 50-60% of it, is in fashion and electronics. And even in electronics, mobiles are actually the top selling. By 2017, what we're going to see is that fashion is going to actually shrink a little bit in its pie. Electronics is even going to increase more. Why? Because as we become more aware of all the electronics we can get, and because they're standardized products, right? I look at a model number, I can come online and buy it. It's not a big deal. Okay, I want a refrigerator, I want an AC, I can buy a computer. Whatever you want in electronics today is available online. And as such, that pie is going to get a little bit larger. The other thing that we're seeing online is that services are growing. More and more services are being offered online, pest control, home services, etc., which never used to be there. More and more businesses are cropping up that offer services. Baby products, cosmetics, they all are becoming bigger online now. If you heard of Nykaa, Nykaa recently received huge amount of funding in India. Okay, why? Because they're offering cosmetics, okay, high-end cosmetics. Finally, people are realizing that they can come online and they don't have to see a color to buy. They can actually go buy a color, some cherry something 136 or whatever, and it's the same online as well. All right? I know some people laughed if I said cherry 136, like I know the number, but I actually don't. So a lot of different things are happening. Online, a lot of things are changing. One of the other categories that I think a lot of you may look at is something called furniture and home accessories. That's growing tremendously. If you look at an Urban Ladder, if you look at a Pepper Fry, they're constantly going out and able to ship large products, okay? Flat pack them and ship them. Again, infrastructure has improved for them, and as such, furniture and home furnishings category is growing hugely. They're probably one of the fastest growing online categories. Now, what I want to do is ask one of our experts. I'm sure you guys have heard of Mahesh Murthy. He runs a company called Pinstorm, and he has another fund called Seed Fund. Okay, he's an investor in the space. He's been following the space for a while, and what we want to do is kind of get from him a view of what are the emerging trends in India. So let's see what Mahesh has to say.
It's taken a while for the infrastructure to catch up, for people to have the ability to pay using a debit card, pay using a credit card, pay using cash on delivery, to have the infrastructure to go into cash on delivery. We're too early. I think now it's here to stay. I mean, The one interesting thing that I say is that unlike the West, where things move slowly, you start with a corner, you start with a small shop in a main street, then you have a bigger store, then you have a corner shop in downtown somewhere, then you have a kind of shop in a large mall, then you have a big box store somewhere on the outskirts of a city, and then you go online. In India, I don't think we're going to follow that same pattern. It's going to leapfrog. You may have a small shop somewhere, you may have it may or may not become a big store, and you can go straight online. So we're going to simply leapfrog generations in India. So both from the merchant side and from the consumer side, a lot more business will actually go online in India a lot sooner and a lot differently compared to the rest of the world. Again, compared to the West, we're going to be far more mobile-centric than we're going to be desktop-centric. We're going to be far more COD-centric than credit card-centric for at least the immediate future. So it's going to be very different from what you've seen in China or in Brazil or in Russia or in the US or anywhere else in the world. It will happen, it's been happening, it's going to grow, but not like any other country.
So I think 3 points that he made, very valid points. One, we're going to leapfrog some of the steps, okay, like I talked about. Okay, our penetration in organized retail is so low that we have to leapfrog. Some of the businesses are not even going to get to a shop, they're going to go directly online. Like he talked about, consumers are going to skip the step of being on a computer or a laptop. They're going to directly be on a mobile. The other point he made, which is very important, we're very different than the US and Brazil and etc. I think people don't realize we all the time compare to those other countries as far as how we do business. But we're very different, and our economy is going to grow very differently. And I think those are the points that Mahesh made here. What I also want to do next is actually one other expert speaker that we have, Harish Tibriwal. He's been in the marketing space for a very long time. We want to hear from him what he has to say about this whole space.
I think the evolution of e-commerce has been extraordinary that we have seen. So long back when I was running Home India way back in 1998, there was no organized ecosystem for e-commerce. Everything had to be done by yourself. So say for example, we were looking for a ERP system which could help us manage order fulfillment. Now ERP systems at that point of time were not e-commerce ready or e-commerce enabled. So we had to pretty much build our own e-commerce system. We were looking for a payment gateway, and there was not a single bank in India at that point of time who had the ability to accept money online. So we actually had to talk to a foreign bank somewhere in the US and set up a payment gateway. So from a time where the ecosystem was not existing to a time where there's like a huge ecosystem available now and everything can be pretty much plug and play to kind of get started, that's like one big shift. The second shift is just in terms of the sheer consumer size. So 1998, 10, 20, 30 million, that was the total mass of consumers you were talking to. Today you have 300 million consumers you can talk to. So the market has kind of reached a tipping point. And the third is just the general orientation you are able to see with a person, both in terms of buying and selling goods. In 1998, if we asked a vendor, do you want to put up a goods on website to sell, he would almost laugh it off, saying, why will somebody buy it online? So I think these are the three significant changes: the whole development of an ecosystem, a shift in the consumer mindset of believing that things can be bought and sold online, and just the sheer size of the market.
So like both of our speakers were talking about, they were reiterating a lot of the points that we've talked about. Market has a lot of potential. It's come a long way. We're going to leapfrog a lot of the steps. Mobile is going to be the one that's going to take over the market, not laptops, not desktops. Now, obviously, there's one big conclusion out of all of this. India has huge potential in e-commerce. Okay, huge. We all realize that. We talked about the numbers, right? But what lacks, or what are the challenges, right? Infrastructure, people. That's why we actually came up with this course. We said that people have to be trained for e-commerce, right? You can't grow an economy without properly trained people. We're seeing that issues at largest of the players, may it be a Flipkart, may it be a Snapdeal, may it be an Amazon. They're struggling to hire good people. So the point and the conclusion that we want to say is that overcoming these challenges is going to be hugely rewarding. So all you need to do is come up with some idea, overcome some of these challenges we're talking about, be properly trained, pay attention in our classes, and obviously there's going to be a huge reward at the end of that.
So you just mentioned that mobile is the future of e-commerce.
Yes.
I want to know, like, various e-commerce websites that have their own mobile application.
Yes.
Okay. Then again, mobile comes with a limitation in terms of space.
Yep.
Okay. And if I want to buy fashion apparel from Myntra, okay, I may like to buy accessories from Snapdeal. Okay. So again, I have limited space in terms of downloading the applications. doesn't the desktop or the computers give me more flexibility in terms of checking out more options?
So I mean, right now we're talking about just a timeline, right? As things progress further, mobiles are going to get cheaper. The mobiles with space will get cheaper. You'll be able to accommodate more apps. So it's only a matter of time till that happens, okay? Ultimately, a mobile is more convenient, right? You can travel with it. You're in a car, you're in a bus, you're in a train. You can see what you want. You may not purchase it then, but at least you're able to browse. You can't do that with a desktop. Laptop still is very hard. Taking out a big bulky laptop out of your bag, putting on your lap, looking at things, versus a mobile, you just take it out of your pocket and you're starting to look. So ultimately, mobile has its own advantages. It's just a matter of time when you'll be able to accommodate all those apps. Second thing you need to realize, and something, a lesson from the US, there will only be a few large guys out there. Today, we may have 4 or 5 large guys. Ultimately, in the US, by the way, how many of you know, out of the 279 billion of sales, what is the percentage that Amazon owns? More than 50%. Just imagine that one single player in the US has more than 50% of the e-commerce market. Their next competitor is somewhere in 12, 13%. That's how big they are. And it's across any economy. You look at China. Alibaba Group owns China, right? Malaysia, same thing. You look at UK, same thing. There are 1 or 2 very large players. Ultimately, that's what we're going to move towards. And then everybody else is going to be a niche player, okay? So you may have an app from someone that gives you the best fashion accessory, but otherwise, most of your shopping will be done from one other player.
Earlier you mentioned that the mobiles would be the most dominant platform through which e-commerce would be conducted in India. More and more newer devices are portable, which are easier and quicker to access. So as they are developed, would mobiles not be relegated to the backstage then?
So we're talking about mobiles. We're not talking about a phone. Right? Remember, we said mobile. It's any device that's mobile. So it could be an Apple Watch, though shopping on an Apple Watch is damn hard. So I don't know how you're shopping on an Apple Watch. So I think mobile phone will still have majority of it because the screen is large enough. We're able to see. Plus, what is happening, and I think later on in the course we'll cover about user interface and all of that. And we'll talk about how to make it more friendly for somebody using a mobile.
I was actually thinking less about the Apple Watch and more about stuff like Google Glass actually.
So very truthfully, you know, Google Glass pulled plug on a lot of its things, right? There's a reason. Can you imagine wearing a glass? I mean, I'm playing devil's advocate here. Can you imagine wearing a glass to shopping? I mean, where are you sitting with that glass? I mean, think about it. You're in the train, you've got this glass on, and then how are you shopping?
Touch interface.
Can you imagine this? Right at the train? It's not happening. Until a lot of other things come in play, I don't think you're going to see, at least for e-commerce, a lot of these things have a big play. Okay, virtual reality is something that they're all toying with, but that's not to make the transaction. That's just to make things more live for you. It's not for the transaction. So transaction will have to happen on some device somewhere, which is not wearable. It cannot be a wearable device. I just can't see a big wearable.
There has been some research into mind interface devices, but I guess that's a long way.
That's when robots will be cleaning my house and doing all that stuff. It's okay.
When you say guys are very small, I mean 1 or 2 players will be playing. Amazon is 1 player. The rest of us are doing aram in a way. So in a way, market space are very small in quantity, 1, 2 or 3. For big industry, is it how much true? I mean, there's no competition in a way, monopoly.
No, so that's how it ends up being, right? It's all about scale. Every business is about scale. You have competition, but they're one very big leaders. Almost, especially in the digital space, you look at it, right? Google, where is the competition to Google?
No competition.
Why? It's because scale. Their scale is so huge. For another entrant to come in, and by the way, there is a company that's been funded billions to compete with Google in the US. But you don't hear about it. Have you ever heard of any other search engine in the world? I mean, pehle tha, Yahoo tha, Bing tha, Lycos tha, there's others. But today, there's nobody else. Why? Because scale takes over. So we all saw what India has potential for, right? All the numbers are telling us India is going to grow. Okay, there's huge potential out there. But why is this industry growing? What are the reasons behind it? What are the advantages of being online, etc.? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand it over to Nayan, and Nayan is going to take you through advantages, the growth factors, etc.